माय यूट्यूब चैनल द सोलफुल डायरी। आज के वीडियो में हम बात करेंगे क्वेर थ्योरी के बारे में। तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं आज की वीडियो। What is queer theory? The queer theory was introduced by writers and activists in the early 1990s as the result of studies of women discrimination and treatment in the literature on the issues of queer sexuality. This theory explores the issues like sexuality, marginalization of women and other population, and power inequality in the society as well as the culture. Since the 1970s, different authors have approached the deconstructionist criticism in order to identify the issues of sexual identity. This is in context specifically considering the heteronormativity in an effort to change the deeply rooted belief and norm that provides the privileges to heterosexuality as a natural rule in the society. It also tries to consider the non-heteronormative sexuality as a natural phenomenon. The goal of this theory is to change the monolithic thoughts, taxonomies, and social norms about the sexuality, including the exploration of the root cause of the creation and development of those norms in the society. On the other hand, it is very clear in the context of academic studies, but it lacks the clarity when it comes to usage in the real life. The queer term. Queer is used as an umbrella term for sexual minorities. These minorities are not heterosexual, so this term was originally used to show them as abnormal or strange. It was used to show the negativity and the social discomfort towards those who have sexual relationships with the same gender. Its use started in the late 1900s. Of queer. Some queer theorists point out the meaning of queer as something that does not match with the norms, crosses the boundaries, and fails to fall within the categories defined by the majority in the society. So the theorists disagree with the politics and rules used to reinforce the lines, define classes, and introduce the new set of norms. Queer sexuality is relatively new and is used when a behavior can be described or included within the categories of gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender. Since it is a new term and some people tend to call their own orientation as queer, the use of Q representing queerness or queer identity was started since 1996. Basically, it was introduced as an addition to LGBT due to the people questioning a sexual identity when they don't want to identify it as any of the four categories already in use. Of queer as a term, the scholars and activists started using the word to unite the community and have a distinct identity in the late 1980s. People not willing to accept the gender identity established by the society started describing themselves as queer as a significantly large and ambiguous label as an option to the label LGBT. However, it is also noted by the queer theorists that the term can be usefully in accordance with the definition, so they agree and accept that though the term is being used to denote the individual identity as a result of psychological processes interacting with cultural forms, the queer theory may not be understood in its full meaning. According to the Introduction to Queer Theory, Lesbian Gay Sexualities by Dr. Lawrence, term queer enjoys an advantage over term gay while implying minority gender and sexual identity, but at the same time it also avoids the assumption of gay as an associated term with white male. For some people from the bisexual and transgender groups, queer gender seems more promising as an identity compared to the categories gay, lesbian, or homosexual, which fail to identify their problems like isolation and alienation when considered the norms of sexuality and gender. Statements and work on queer. Epistemology of the Closet, published by Eve Kosofsky, Sedgwick in 1990, effectively worked as a short attempt on explaining the queer theory. This and other major statements appeared in the 1990s that gave an insight into how queer theory would emerge and function for the minority group of sexuality and gender in the society. Though Eve Kosofsky Sedgwick has not used the word queer in her book, she has given a great view of how it would develop. To support this, she presented the arguments that the major interpretive key that can help understand the culture in the Western world is the way of the management of identities of LGBT people, which is the logic behind disclosure and concealment. Opposite to the belief prevailing in the society, it is queer claim that LGBT identities have an important use for everyone rather than just an identity for the LGBT community, as such identities have a significant effect and role in defining the system of cultural meanings to a great extent. An interdependency between the identity queer as a term and the system. A contradicting fact faced by the queer theorist is the explanation of how a person resists the system's oppression when his or her own identity self itself is an outcome of the functioning of an oppressive system. In the Western liberalism, identity is what one has as a result of a social, political, and cultural process rather than a starting point from where one can establish the ground for intellectual performance and political actions. These processes, being very important in order to define queer as a term, significantly depend on the concepts of categories like race, class, gender, and sexuality, where such categories also originate from the idea of dominant power relation reflecting the nature and are taken in the political context. Consequently, the process are also impacted by the categories as they significantly shape the role of an individual in being active or inactive culturally, socially, and politically. The point when the definition of gender and sexual identity particularly seems established firmly, theorists supporting queer theory are interested in exploring the combination of bodies, acts, and desires in the context of definition of identity. The subject of interest is to understand how they can be combined in a different way and still keeping them from being too rigid and disciplinary. Since the respect towards the white and middle class gay and lesbian has increased over time, and a number of heterosexual people who often refuse to accept the norms of sexuality set by gender studies being part of a modern world has been increasing. Sedgwick shows a strong possibility of lesbian or gay people being seen as such who are not queer, and queer people being considered as such when they not lesbian or gay against the queer as an identity, though the members of LGBT community and others considering it more as a colloquial usage criticize the use of queer as a term. They see it as an insult to the non-radical community and perceive as a threat to the place they have in the society. Theorists consider the usage of the term helpful in making a distance for the gay and lesbian words, which falls to connect or include the term transgender, intersex, and bisexual. But many gay and lesbian people often use the term queer interchangeably for the other terms. As a result, this term is gaining popularity with its broader sense, containing the white middle class and conservative lesbian and gay people to sexually radical groups. However, some homophobes and conservatives are still using the term queer pejoratively. As a result, many people from the LGBT community and others supporting their rights question the usability of such a term, considering that it is widely used as a means to isolate and insult LGBT people. Sedgwick has attempted to get LGBT studies out of stereotype mentality and societal limits and conveyed the facts that Western culture of modern times was being consistently affected by queer disruptions. The problem is in the studies done within the ghetto was that it seemed to present less relevant arguments and helped only in understanding rather than identifying the issues and their solutions concerning LGBT. तो आई होप आज का वीडियो आपको पसंद है। कैसी लगे हमें कमेंट करके बताएं। अगर कोई डाउट्स या सजेशंस है तो वो भी आप कमेंट सेक्शन में ड्रॉप कर सकते हैं। अगर वीडियो अच्छी लगे तो लाइक शेयर एंड सब्सक्राइब टू माई चैनल। मिलते हैं कल एक और इन्फॉर्मेटिव वीडियो के साथ शाम 4 बजे। Till then, keep watching and keep supporting the Soulful Diary. Thank you.